Stoppage time at the London Stadium. West Ham are down to their final attack of the season against the runaway league leaders, and Callum Wilson buries a half volley through a crowd of bodies to snatch a point off the team that's about to be crowned champions of England. He runs to the corner flag, his teammates pile on top of him, and then for almost 2 full minutes, absolutely nothing happens because the referee is walking toward a small television screen on the edge of the pitch, and the biggest title race the Premier League has seen in years is about to be decided by a review room in Stockley Park instead of by the players on the grass. That single moment, more than any other, sums up the season English football just lived through. Arsenal ended a 22-year wait and are Premier League champions again for the first time since the Invincibles, and it is a genuinely remarkable story of a manager finally getting over the line after 3 straight runner-up finishes. But sit any neutral fan down and ask them what they actually remember from this campaign, and the conversation doesn't stay on the football for long. It turns into VAR. The independent panel that reviews every controversial call in England lodged 25 confirmed officiating blunders this season, 7 more than the year before, making it the worst campaign for video review mistakes since the panel started keeping score. This is the story of how those decisions shaped the title race, wrecked careers, ruined goals of the season, and left fans of almost every club with at least one moment they still can't quite let go of. Before we get into the worst of it, if this is your first time here, go ahead and hit subscribe because we cover every major storyline coming out of English football, and there's a lot more of this season still to unpack. Start with the numbers because they tell an uncomfortable story on their own. When that independent panel broke down which clubs benefited and which clubs got burned, 2 teams stood out above everyone else. Arsenal and Chelsea were the biggest winners from officiating mistakes all season long, and neither club had a single error given against them in either direction. Arsenal alone had several decisions swing their way over the campaign, more than every side in the division except one. On the other end of it, Manchester City, the team Arsenal had to hold off to win the title, absorbed more of these errors than almost anyone else in the league. It wasn't just one moment either. Early in the season, Arsenal were denied what looked like a clear penalty against Everton when Kai Havertz went down under a challenge from Michael Keane, with replays showing contact on the German's trailing foot that officials waved away as too minimal to award. A few weeks later, Arsenal felt they should have had a spot kick against Nottingham Forest too, after Ola Aina appeared to use his arm to keep the ball in play in his own box, another one that went unpunished. And then there was the incident away at Manchester City themselves, when Gabriel Magalhaes appeared to square up to Erling Haaland in an off-the-ball coming together that plenty of pundits thought deserved a straight red card for violent conduct. VAR looked at it and chose not to intervene. Social media did not let that one go quietly.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, drop a like and make sure you're subscribed because we're only just getting started with the biggest calls of the season. Rewind all the way back to the opening month of the campaign because this is where the tone for the entire season got set. Fulham were hosting Chelsea in a West London derby, still level at 0-0, when an 18-year-old academy graduate named Josh King picked up the ball in his own half, drove the length of the pitch, danced past the defender, and rifled a finish into the bottom corner for what looked like his first Premier League goal. The celebrations lasted about as long as it takes VAR to pause a replay. Officials went back to a coming together moments earlier between Rodrigo Muniz and Chelsea's Trevoh Chalobah, ruled it a foul, and chalked the entire goal off. Chelsea went on to win the game 2-0. The head of English refereeing later came out publicly and admitted the whole thing had been a misjudgment, that the goals should have stood, and that the video review process had failed the teenager. Fulham's response was to give King's disallowed strike their official Goal of the Month award anyway, with fans handing it 83% of the vote purely out of spite for how it had been taken away. It became a running joke for the rest of the season, but underneath the joke was a real problem, because if the very first big call of the year was already being labeled a mistake by the people running the system, fans had every reason to lose faith in every review that followed. That inconsistency kept showing up all season, and nowhere was it clearer than at Old Trafford in the Manchester derby. 10 minutes into the game, Diogo Dalot caught Jeremy Doku with a challenge just under the knee as the winger burst down the flank. It looked reckless in real time, and pundits immediately compared it to an almost identical tackle earlier in the season that had earned another player a straight red card against Liverpool.
This time, VAR reviewed it, decided the contact was only glancing, and let DeLotte stay on the pitch with a yellow. Roy Keane wasn't buying it, and neither were a lot of neutral fans who had watched two nearly identical fouls get two completely different punishments in the same season. Add in a stretch of matches around game week 26 that felt almost designed to test everyone's patience. Tammy Abraham denied a stonewall penalty against Brighton, Phil Foden somehow avoiding a red card for a foul on Calvin Bassey against Fulham, a handball shout against Jayden Bogle in the build-up to a Leeds equalizer at Chelsea that officials ruled had come off his thigh rather than his arm, and a potential hair pull by Kenny Tete on Antoine Semenyo that went completely unpunished even after a full video review, and you start to understand why supporters across the league were losing their minds on a near weekly basis. We're just past the halfway mark here, so if you haven't already, now's a great time to hit that subscribe button, because the next part of this video covers the single decision that may have decided where the trophy actually ended up. Which brings us back to where we started, West Ham away at Arsenal deep into May with the title race hanging by a thread. Callum Wilson's stoppage-time equalizer was initially given as a goal by referee Chris Kavanagh, only for VAR official Darren England to send him to the pitchside monitor. After reviewing the footage, Kavanagh ruled that West Ham substitute Pablo had held David Raya's arm as the Arsenal goalkeeper tried to claim the initial delivery into the box, and the goal was wiped off the board in favor of a foul. Arsenal held on to win. Howard Webb, the man in charge of English officiating, went on record afterward to defend the call completely, insisting that any goalkeeper being protected around the arms has to be protected, regardless of how much pressure is riding on the moment. Wilson wasn't having it. He pointed out that Arsenal's own players, Leandro Trossard and Gabriel among them, had been just as physically involved in the same scrambles seconds earlier, and that if officials were going to punish one piece of shirt pulling in a crowded box, they needed to be consistent and punish all of it. Analysts who broke down the numbers afterward concluded this was arguably the single most consequential officiating call of the entire campaign, the kind of moment that could have sent the title race to the final day of the season instead of settling it early. Arsenal went on to be crowned champions with the smallest of margins separating them from Manchester City, and it's fair to say that goal, and the 2 minutes it took to disallow it, will be argued about in West Ham pubs for years to come. One more quick reminder to subscribe if you're still with us, because there's a lot more football drama we cover on this channel every single week. There was one final flashpoint worth mentioning before we wrap up, a Manchester United strike from Benjamin Šeška in May that the striker appeared to prod home after the ball brushed off his fingertips first. The opposing dugout was furious, convinced it should have been ruled out for handball, but officials couldn't find a single conclusive camera angle to prove it either way, and the goal stood. The independent review panel later looked at the same footage and remarkably agreed there wasn't enough evidence to call it an error at all. It was a fitting final word on a season where certainty was in shorter supply than ever, where 25 confirmed mistakes weren't even the full picture once you counted every 50-50 call that technically didn't meet the threshold for a VAR intervention in the first place. So where does that leave things heading into next season? Arsenal and Manchester City are actually meeting again incredibly soon, in the Community Shield on the 16th of August, before the new Premier League campaign kicks off just 5 days after that. Every fan going into that fixture, and every fan going into the new season right behind it, is going to be watching the video review room just as closely as they watch the players. If this past campaign proved anything, it's that in the modern Premier League, the biggest moment of a match might not come from a striker or a goalkeeper at all. It might come from a referee jogging over to a small screen on the sideline.